Hey everyone, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. I'm your host, William Glass. On the Silicon Alley Podcast, we talk about entrepreneurship, talk to entrepreneurs about their journey, how they're making decisions, and just the day-to-day of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And on today's episode, I'm really excited to share with you a special guest, Andrew Holliday. He is the co-founder of Ostrich. So him and I have co-founded this company, and really excited to share his story because it differs from mine in some interesting ways, but you'll see how our dynamic and why we ended up coming together as a team. But you also hear, more importantly, what is his motivation, his drive, and what he's really focused on. So this is actually going to be a two-parter. We had a pretty long conversation, so splitting this up into two parts, and I hope that you enjoy part one of my conversation with Andrew Holliday, co-founder of Ostrich.
No time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying, I'll never leave this place. Some words got you searching for the bright side over and over until you're looking on the inside. Yeah. One life, there's a feeling that you can't find, holding a hope and only keep you on the outside.
Welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. I'm your host, William Glass. I'm here with Andrew Holliday, who is my co-founder here at Ostrich. So we're working on Ostrich together, and I'm really excited to have him on and introduce you to his story and what he's been up to and how we got to where we are today. So welcome, Andrew. Excited to have you on.
Great to be here. I'm recording live from the bedroom.
Live from the bedroom.
Making it happen.
Yeah. So Andrew's in the process of, well, maybe I'll let you tell that story.
Yeah. Currently in the process of leaving the country for an extended period of time. Been trying to get out of the rat race now for a number of years and finally took the plunge. Well, technically, I guess I haven't taken the plunge yet. Still employed for now.
Yeah. By the time this
on sabbatical. By the time this goes out, I will no longer be employed. To the great surprise of my current employer. I will probably be in South America, I would think, by the time this is available for consumption.
You
this is not a quick turnaround.
Awesome. Well, let's segue into that. So give me a little bit about your early career, a little bit about who you are. Yeah, let's start there.
Start from the beginning. Born in Livingston, New Jersey.
That doesn't sound like a Jersey accent.
No, it doesn't. To expat parents who lived in and around New York for about 5 years, and I spent 2 years here as a young child and moved back to the UK with them when I was 2-3 years old. So I grew up there, came back here for college, conveniently have both passports, which has enabled me to remain in the US since I left school and started working. I did business undergrad, played soccer at Rollins College, where your host William Glass also attended, and then went straight from Rollins to business school in Rochester, New York, which was a polar opposite of Rollins College, and did an MBA there with a focus in finance. Ended up moving to New York City after that. Started in private equity at a firm that was winding down, which was cushy and interesting, but limited in terms of scope. Yeah. And then moved into portfolio valuation at a large public investment bank, which is what I currently do. But by the time you're listening to this, I will no longer be doing that. So that's been my life up to this point. Finance is interesting up to a point, but it's a killer. So I've been attempting to get out since I started. And
so what led you into finance then anyway? Like why?
It seemed like the natural thing to do. My dad was a banker as well. It was something that I had taken an interest in when I was younger. But business in general had appealed to me. Mm-hmm. Finance I saw as a pathway to more knowledge.
Okay.
A good education and good training to set me up to go and do whatever it is that I wanted to do after that. And so now I'm going to figure out whatever it is that I want to do after that. That was the rationale behind going into finance.
Okay.
And there are certain aspects, like I don't particularly I don't think I want to go back to doing what I'm currently doing.
Okay.
In portfolio valuation, as much as some of that is interesting, not enough of it is to me. But going back to something private equity based at some point in the future would be more interesting to me.
Okay.
Possibly something with a sports focus. That would be a reason for me to consider going back.
So you ended up in finance, and that makes a lot of sense. So tell me about where you are now.
No longer in finance.
Okay.
Immediately, no longer in finance. I am and have been planning now for a number of months this time off to be away from traditional work for 6 or more months, traveling around, seeing a different part of the world that I've never been to before, but also giving myself the opportunity to work on things that I would like to work on, such as Ostrich.
Yep.
And some other stuff as well, some property management stuff for my parents, some career coaching, resume writing kind of stuff. And I'm looking at this as an investment in myself. This is time for me to figure out what works best for me in terms of my productivity, how to structure my day when I don't have any commitments. It's just for me to figure out, okay, what's going to be the best way for me to work.
Yep.
To be fit and healthy as possible. I've spent a lot of time eating dinner at the office in the past 2 years and trying to get as much exercise in as I can and getting banged up playing football every week. And I'm looking forward to time away from that. Just being able to focus on what do I want for me, and what sort of lifestyle do I want to have moving forwards, and how can I, one, figure out what that looks like, and two, set myself up for success with that in the next 6+ months while I'm away.
Yeah.
And hopefully Ostrich is a huge part of that. That's the plan.
Yep.
So
it will be.
Yeah. I feel good about it. So that's where I currently stand, is setting myself up for the rest of my life.
I gotcha.
I think.
So there's a lot of things there that I want to unpack,
Sure.
dive into. I guess first off, a little bit more tactical. What? So you said you've been planning this
Yep.
for many, many months. How long has this been an idea or a need, or how did you, what's that transition, that process been?
So I would say the genesis of this was a mixture of reading the 4-Hour Work Week.
Okay.
A number of years ago now. I read that probably 3 years ago, I want to say, after my brother read it, he similarly very committed to not having a real job.
Air quotes, real
taking
job.
taking his own pathway. That was one genesis. Another piece of this was my girlfriend Grace, who has long desired the freedom to travel the world and not be constrained by your traditional American lifestyle, as it were.
Sure.
And so that was that's those two buckets were kind of the origin of where this idea came from. And it hadn't been something I was really working towards until probably the very end of 2018, beginning of 2019, was when we started to think, okay, we can put ourselves in a position to do this over the next 8, 9, 10 months. And we looked at what timing made sense for us in terms of Grace's job and in terms of my job. We thought about how we would be able to leave our lease behind without any penalties. We thought about what do we want to do in terms of, do we want to store a bunch of stuff? Do we want to sell a bunch of stuff that we own and really downsize and kind of get to a more basic style of living, which is where we've ended up ultimately, or at least that's where we're working towards ending up right now. And so we've put a significant amount of time and effort into planning how to get out
Yeah.
and do this almost as much as, if not more, than the time and effort we've put into planning the trip and what that's going to look like. So it's, yes, the culmination of, you know, almost a year's worth of planning and working hard and getting ourselves into a position where we were able to do this. And that involved a lot of, you know, making some choices around, you know, we're not going to do certain things, we're not going on big trips, we're going to certainly cut our rent payment compared to our last apartment. One of the big things for me was working hard and making sure I got promoted over the summer.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessary to the plan. We knew we were still going to do this on the same timeline, but it certainly helps in terms of extra cash and in this case a few extra weeks off, which were included as part of that promotion. So everything over the last 8 or 9 months has been with this in mind, knowing that, okay, on December the 5th, we're going to fly from London to Buenos Aires, and that's going to be it. We'll be gone for however long we can be, and we will figure it out. That's where things currently stand.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, and it's obviously, it's not just saying, hey, we want to go travel the world, but putting in the plan in place, and it sounds like that's been even more challenging, is figuring out how to get out of the status quo, the day-to-day, the just structure that you get put into place when you're a kid and then go throughout school and end up in the working world and end up in that same structure whether you
absolutely
wanted to or not.
Yeah, and it's very easy to think about doing this kind of thing and just continue to put it off and put it off and put it off. And I certainly have been fortunate in my life to be given the opportunities that I've had. You know, it's all very well me saying, oh, well, this is a combination of almost a year's worth of planning, but that's enabled by both Grace and I having good paying jobs and the knowledge that we've gained from traveling in the past and
Sure.
knowing that we're able to do this. So I've been lucky in that sense, but at the same time, it would be very easy for us to say, oh, okay, you know, well, let's just give it another 8 months. You know, I got promoted in the summer, which means that my bonus cycle changes, so I get another bonus in May, instead of having to wait a full year to get, you know, another significant chunk of money coming in that would, you know, make a big difference.
Absolutely.
You know, we could put away a whole load more money in the next 6 months, get another significant check, and decide, okay, well, now we're going to go travel for a year instead of 6 months. But at that point, you're thinking, wow, all of a sudden, you know, I'm probably going to get a raise. My bonus will probably go up next year. There's always more money on the table.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very easy to stay on the hamster wheel, and then you're in your early 30s and you're thinking, oh, I better have kids now. And then you end up with a mortgage, and then all of a sudden life passes you by and you're like, well, okay, we'll go take that trip when we're 50 and we've retired.
Yeah.
But that's not as fun when you've got, you know, all of a sudden I've kept playing football against my better judgment in New York City for 30 years, you know, and I'm beaten up and my knees don't work anymore. And there's all of these fun things that I want to do that I'm not able to do once I get older. So something that was really important for us was picking this date, saying, okay, we're going to think about what do we need to achieve to be able to go, how much money do we want to have to be comfortable leaving, and what runway is that going to give us in terms of how many months are we going to have, how much do we want to have left at the end of it.
Sure.
And we picked that point, and we knew, you know, based on the decisions that we would make, that we could get there. We had this goal in mind, and we got to it, and it was important for us to say, this is going to be the date regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
You know, I get promoted, it's more money, there's always more money.
Oh, yeah.
But this is the time that we picked to say, okay, we're going to go, and that's the end of it, and get out of it. And hopefully this is, again, it's an investment in myself. It's the opportunity to find what it is that I am really good at, and hopefully be successful at in a way that's more palatable to me, to my lifestyle.
Than banging away on Excel.
Yeah, rather than banging away on Excel for 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. You know, I don't need, that's an exaggeration, but I don't need that.
Yeah.
It's too much stress. It's too much working for other people.
Fair enough. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what are you hoping to get out? What do you think? What are your hypotheses? What are you testing? What are you what are some of the things that you want to accomplish over the next 6 months or so?
So initially, there are a couple of things that I'd like to try and set up, which should be easy passive income. So I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit there. I need to build a website for my parents. I need to focus on setting up a resume writing, career coaching opportunity for myself, which is less so passive income, but the money comes to you and it's on your schedule.
Sure.
As clients come to you, and it's something that I find relatively easy.
Okay.
So it's not something that I have to work super hard at in order to be good at it.
Yeah.
And to be helpful to other people, to provide value. So I think up front, setting that up, putting myself in a position where there's money coming in the door, is something that I'd like to do. And it helps me in terms of learning about building websites. That's something that I'm interested in, that I think will be useful, that I haven't done before. And now I have the time to do that. So that's something that I'm looking forward to learning about. I think beyond that, working remotely with you on Ostrich is something that I'm interested to test and see what's the best way for us to do this if we're going to be in different places.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is it going to work, or is this something that, in 6 months' time I've been traveling around and we've been doing this and we think, okay, it's like working, but we really need to be in the same place for a period of time to really get things off the ground and get things going.
Yeah.
And then learning from the difficulty so that in the future, if we're doing something similar, then we know, okay, what are the pitfalls and what are we going to need to avoid?
Yeah.
So testing what works in terms of communication. How frequently do we need to be in touch? What can we outsource? What do we not outsource?
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff is going to be very important. And I think keeping track of that is going to be vital for us, and figuring out, when we test stuff, making sure that we're noting this works, this doesn't work, and being able to apply that to a number of other things.
Absolutely.
That hopefully we do in the future as well, I think is really useful. So that's, on the work side, that's going to be a big part of it.
Yeah.
And then from a diet and exercise standpoint, going back to hopefully eating more vegan. I feel like I've been indulging myself a lot in the last few weeks.
Going to Argentina though.
I know, that's going to be interesting.
Have some steaks.
Yeah, for sure. Can't miss out on the Argentinian steak. But I think for the most part, aiming to get back to a more plant-based diet than I have been allowing myself to eat recently, and trying to optimize my fitness regime in terms of, obviously, as you will know from the past, I've had a lot of back problems, and a lot of that has stemmed from Olympic style weightlifting, and that's not something that I particularly want to go back to, but I did like the fitness that I gained from that. So finding a way to achieve that level of physical fitness and be happy with where I am, whilst avoiding the more risky styles of exercise, and hopefully focusing on body weight exercises, and figuring out what does that look like for me. That's going to be a big thing for me in the next 6 months. And that's something that to me feels like it's a steep learning curve, but then once you're there, you're there.
Yeah.
Like I could jump back in, if I was fit and healthy, I could jump back into Olympic style weightlifting tomorrow if I wanted to, and I would know how to build back up to where I was. But that's not something I know with the bodyweight exercises. So, I've talked to the physical therapist that I've been going to see for a number of months about what do I need to be doing to keep myself healthy in the manner that I've managed to get to up to this point, and how can I then make progress whilst being away and traveling.
Yeah.
And that's going to be...
Any key insights there?
Focus. Not yet, because I don't know what's going to work.
All right.
But yeah, I'll let you know in 6 months. Hopefully there will be some.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've got... This isn't just a, hey, go travel and we're going to go see stuff. There's more of a plan. It's more of testing a lifestyle than it is vacation away from it all for... many, many months, which not that that's not an aspect of it, but
that's the aspect of it it's like a given for me.
It's
like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna go see all this stuff, it'll be great. That's just there, that's in the background. I know that that's gonna happen. I'm more worried about, okay, well, what am I gonna do in terms of making this a sustainable situation for me, because there's always gonna be stuff to go and see. You know, I'm always going to want to go places and see things, and I know that this is an unbelievable opportunity to do that, to spend time, especially down in Patagonia particularly. I'm very excited about to go down there and to just be outdoors, not camping outdoors because I don't like camping, but just to be hiking outdoors on a regular basis and seeing some of these amazing landscapes.
Yeah.
And just being in a completely different part of the world I'm so excited about that. So I don't want to give the wrong idea that this is like, well, I'm just going to go to these amazing places and then try and figure out how I work best.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a balance. It's something that we hope to make sustainable, rather than we're going to take the trip of a lifetime for 6 months and then spend another 10 years working and then maybe try and do it again in 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's something that I know we've talked about when it comes to Ostrich specifically, is figuring out how can we make it as flexible as possible, as a way for both of us and just anyone that we bring on board in general to work flexibly, to be able to not have to prioritize or not give up certain things that are really important to them just to live or work. And somehow, how can you have a better balance?
Absolutely. Because I think you, to a certain extent, and certainly for me, we've both experienced having to give up things for work over the last few years. And obviously you haven't had to do that now since May, I would say.
May, yeah.
But that's definitely something that, although I've really enjoyed living in New York and having the lifestyle that I did here, I definitely felt very limited by the job that I was in.
Yeah.
And there are definitely things that I've been unable to do as a result of that job, direct result of that job, regardless of the stress that comes with that. And so I want to avoid that, and I don't want other people to have to go through that. So yeah, if that appeals to you and you're talented and you want to come and work for Ostrich, please reach out to us. info@theostrichapp.com. I'm sure that email will be up and running by the time this goes out.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be running.
You let us know if you think you can provide value and you want a flexible lifestyle.
Yeah, if you want to live in South America. And
board meetings in Patagonia.
Yeah. Let us know.
Please write to us.
Obviously, there's a lot of excitement. What are some of the biggest adjustments, and maybe even some of the things that you're
concerned about?
Yeah.
I think not having any structure is a huge adjustment. That is probably the biggest thing. I'm very excited about that. I think I'm going into this with the mindset that it's an opportunity, as you just talked about. It's an opportunity for me to test different styles of living and different ways for me to be my best self.
Yeah.
That, I think, is very important to have as a mindset. I think it would be very easy for Grace and I, particularly going together, it would be very easy for us to fall into a pattern and to just relax and not be trying to push ourselves. Sure. And we'd have a great time. We would definitely enjoy what was happening, and we would enjoy what we were doing, and it would be an amazing trip. But we could very easily not achieve anything that we really wanted to when we set out on this trip in terms of setting ourselves up for a different lifestyle when we come back. So that, I think, is a really important piece of this whole puzzle. What else am I concerned about? I'm concerned that Grace doesn't speak any Spanish. And I haven't spoken Spanish in a while. And I feel pretty good about my situation. I don't feel so good about her situation. So we're going to see... We're going to see what happens there.
She's going to come back more fluent than you are.
Well, something tells me that's not going to be the case. But if she did, I would be thrilled. I would love for that to happen. But I really don't see it. So that's definitely, that's a concern. But I'm sure we'll get through it. I'm sure we'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then I think the other big concern for me is not being able to take advantage of everything that we're going to get to see. Like everything that we could see and do while we're down there. So over the last couple of months, we've booked a number of pieces of this trip, and a part of it that we're looking forward to is leaving things open-ended.
Yeah.
And not necessarily having a bunch of plans everywhere that we go. But at the same time, there are certain things that we really need to book that that we've got to get sorted and that we haven't been able to do because of, you know, various things that we've had to take care of to get away, to be able to move out, to be, you know, we want to see a lot of people that are around here that we're not going to see for an extended period of time.
Sure.
Because my job doesn't know that I'm quitting, my work hasn't gotten any less stressful until, you know, my last day on whenever it was, November 13th, I think.
Yeah.
That was, I was 100 miles an hour up until that point.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I was going to have nothing to do for a week and a half, and suddenly got staffed on something on a Saturday, you know, and had a solid 9 days of hard work to get through, and then a couple of other days at the end that I still had a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot going on, and we haven't necessarily had the opportunity to get everything sorted out for the trip that we want to. So that, I think, is a blessing and a curse, but certainly I'm worried that on some level we're going to miss out on some things because we haven't been able to devote the time that we would have liked to up to this point. And I think those are the main concerns. I don't think we're overly worried about anything else.
Okay.
I don't know, but there's a lot of currencies that we're going to be operating in. I'm worried about how many places are going to take credit card. I don't want to carry a bunch of dollars around with me. That's a concern.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that in my guide to South America when I get back.
Yeah.
This is what you should do with money. This is what we didn't do and we should have done. It's going to be an article on Ostrich.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Cool. So let's transition a little bit into personal finance a little bit. So what are
Sure.
like, could you describe your relationship with money a little bit? Like, how would you describe it?
Distant. It's there for me. It's not something that I have ever had to be overly concerned about.
Okay.
Which obviously comes from a place of great privilege, and I'm very lucky to have been in that situation. But, you know, I've had to think about, you know, not being stupid over the last 9 months because I know that I'm having to save money to get to a place where I'm ready to leave. But at the same time, I haven't had to give up a whole lot of things that I've wanted to do and wanted to spend money on in order to get into a position where I currently am. So I think about how much money I spend on a somewhat regular basis, but I don't have a detailed budget of any sort. If I was sensible, I'd probably try and do a month or two of spending just on my debit card and have money coming out of my bank account, but I never do that. Everything goes on the credit cards and they just get paid off at the end of the month. And there's money there to do it, but I'm never really on top of things. I don't go back and look through my personal spending and figure out, okay, I'm spending too much money on food, going out to eat food, which I know is the case, but I don't want to think about that. And I know I don't have to, so I just kind of avoid that situation. And so that's, you know, that's the one side of it. From an investment standpoint, I think that, you know, I've been lucky that my dad has been around to advise me to a certain extent. You know, I've put some money away for retirement, but I wouldn't say that that's been appropriately put to work. Okay. It's not all invested. There's a part of me that says, well, you know, the market's near the top. I should wait until it crashes, but it's been happening for 3 or 4 years now. So in terms of investment for retirement, I could be doing a lot more there, and that's something that I feel like I want to learn more about. And, you know, again, that's something I'll have time to do while I'm away, but it doesn't feel like a priority for me. Yeah. Even though I think it probably should be. Mm-hmm. It would probably be the right thing to do. So, yeah, I have I guess it's not a weird relationship with money. Everyone has a weird relationship with money, don't they? And if everybody does, then nobody does. But I have a certain...
Yeah, try and work that one out.
I have a certain level of distance from my own personal finances where I'm just not required to worry about it. And I think the longer I go into entrepreneurship, I imagine that will become more of an issue for me. And I'll have to think about it a lot more. So, yeah, we'll see. That's where I currently stand.
That makes sense. So what about in context of this next chapter? So you mentioned that it sounded like a certain amount that you wanted to end with.
Yep.
Does that mean there's a certain amount that you wanted to hit before you left, or is just, hey, here's, like, what is that?
It was definitely, we had a goal to hit before we left.
Okay.
It felt like a stretch goal, but we going to hit it reasonably comfortably after booking some bits of the trip already.
That's awesome.
Which is great. That's been really nice. And then at that point we knew, okay, so we're going to go with this much and we want to end with this much, which gives us a budget for the trip. And we'd figured out, well, this is how much we want to spend on accommodation. We're going to give ourselves $50 a day to spend on accommodation, and that's a certain amount of money. And we feel comfortable that we can definitely stick to that.
Yeah. Based
on what we've already booked and our research into how much it's going to cost to live in other places. So we feel good about that. And we know that we'll spend more in some places and we're going to spend less in others. So that's fine. And then that gives us an amount of money that we have left over for the rest of the trip.
Yeah.
Again, we feel comfortable that that's probably enough. I think the amount of money that we've planned to have left over at the end of the trip gives us a little bit of flexibility there, so that if we find that we're 3 or 4 months in, and we have spent more than we thought, then we're going to be okay to keep going and doing the things we really want to do, and we can afford to go a little bit over.
You've got a cushion in
if
there.
If it's necessary. We have a nice cushion, and that will still leave us with a good amount of money when we come back.
Yeah.
We'd like to spend a few months in the summer kind of bouncing around a little bit.
Makes sense.
See different parts of this country. But yeah, we've planned out a healthy cushion for ourselves, both for the trip and after the trip. Yeah, that's an important thing. And again, that kind of puts us in a position where we don't really have to worry so much about the money. It enables me to keep that distant.
Yeah.
I don't have to really think about it, and I'm not going to put myself in a tricky spot.
Yeah.
Because we've planned ahead, and hopefully come the end of the trip there will be money coming in. And we'll see.
Lots of it. No, that makes sense. It's interesting because you still said that it's distant, but at the same time it sounds like you put together a budget and can, focus on that when it's something that's important. Not that the day-to-day isn't important, but this is more of a bigger milestone. It's personal. It has more meaning.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been important to do that. Especially now, something that actually is really interesting about this trip is that for Grace and I, it will really be a commingling of finances. We've both put a lot of money. Most of the money that we've made in the last 8 or 9 months has been put towards this trip.
Yeah.
And we really will be, it's much less now, we have my money and your money. It's much more our money. For a bit of context there, we've lived together for 4 years now. Mm-hmm. In and around New York City.
Yeah.
And so there's always been, and we've been together for 5 years. So for the most of our relationship, there has been some mingling of finances, but it's very much still, up until the last 6 or 7 months, it's been, okay, you owe me this much for this, and I owe you this much for this, and we still, we still Venmo back and forth. And that's really going to be different now. I think that's a big step. It's definitely something that I'm comfortable doing. Mm-hmm. And for our relationship, I think it will make us feel like more of a team.
Yeah.
And we're already cognizant of that, and we definitely feel like a team, and we have building towards this goal. But I think that having to make financial decisions together is just another step along that pathway.
Yeah.
But that's going to be, you asked about what's the biggest adjustment going to be? That's going to be a big adjustment. That will be different, making joint decisions like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's one that we're ready to make. We've been somewhat on that path for since we started saving for this.
Yeah. In
a serious way. So it's a logical next step.
Yeah.
But that will be interesting, because that's a whole other, that opens up, well, okay, now I have my finances, but I'm also thinking about her finances, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be an interesting adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going into Ostrich and working together on that, mm-hmm. What has been that, do you want to tell a little bit of story about how we came together? And
Sure. Yeah, let's walk through that. So Will and I went to Rollins together. This was the beginning of our relationship, and played soccer and lived in the same place at college, and steadily became better friends across the years.
Yep.
And then obviously I moved away, mm-hmm. for business school. You stayed in Florida, and I'd seen you a number of times across a few years prior to your moving up here to New York City, where I'd been. And you had talked about this idea that you wanted to get involved in personal finances, and you'd had and we'd had a number of discussions around other entrepreneurial ventures.
Yep.
Across time.
Yep. And you had your own montage business for a while.
Correct. Yeah. Sports scene. So I had my sophomore year at Rollins, I had worked in the summer for a company in England called Capture the Event, producing these photo montages of amateur sporting events. It was mostly rugby in the UK that I was doing there, but it gave me skills with Photoshop that I was then able to look at from a business standpoint and say, okay, the people who want to buy this are people who are at the pinnacle of their amateur careers, and these are people who are playing rugby at England's National Stadium for like the top amateur championship in the country. And obviously that applies very directly to NCAA sports. Yeah. Particularly not so much at the highest D1. Obviously you think about NCAA, you think about March Madness, you think about, FBS, and it's more for people who are below that level. So like Rollins was a perfect example of this, where you have a high level of sport, but most people aren't going pro.
Yeah.
And so this was a great product for that kind of athlete to be able to look back on what they had achieved as a college athlete. And it's a nice memento for the school to give them at the end of their career.
Absolutely.
So I had spent some time setting that up and worked on that with another friend of ours, Alex Bisbee, in at my sophomore and junior year at Rollins, and then continued to do that while I was in business school, and then just let that tail off, which I had some regrets about at the time, but alongside that it was a good experience and taught me a lot about setting up a business.
Yeah.
But also it probably wasn't something that I was in a position to really scale and figure out how to make it into a significant cash generator for me. It was fun, but I wouldn't say that I was in a spot to really grow it.
Yeah.
And it, something that I might go back to in the future if I have the right level of capital to put into it.
Yeah.
And say, okay, let me throw some money at this thing. I think I know how to make it work.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a position to do so without it being time intensive for me personally. So something I might go back to anyway. So that's the background on my entrepreneurial knowledge. Following that, we had spent some time talking about different entrepreneurial ventures over the years, and you had set up Financial Glass, which was a personal blog,
website,
talking about finances. And so we had thrown around this idea, mostly at your behest, to give you your due regarding, okay, well, what can we do to fix, in quotation marks, personal finance in this country, because it's such an issue for people. Ultimately, you had moved up here and started to push this a bit more, and it was something that we were bouncing around for a while, and it ultimately came to a point where, to me at least, it felt like, okay, well, it makes sense for me to be involved if you want me to be involved. And steadily alongside my job, when I have had the time, I've become more heavily involved as a part of Ostrich, and ultimately, as it was founded, was there for that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I think it feels as though I've been a part of the development of where it's come to today.
Absolutely, yeah. The first episode of this podcast talked about the idea and going to that. It was one of those things that I kept throwing around for many years until we were able to sit down and okay, how can we make this work? And I think that's been such a huge value, is just being able to work with someone else, because what you think in your head, and but does it communicate? Does it come out? Does it actually is it actually valuable? So
you always need a second set of eyes.
Exactly. And I think now I'm really excited. I know that obviously some people will be like, okay, well, he's gonna go travel for 6 months and be like, what are you excited about? Good luck.
This is important.
Good luck getting in touch with him while I'm sipping Malbec and Argentinian Malbec or whatever, But I think that we're going to be able to build something that's really good and actually create something, because we've been friends for
a long time now.
Yeah, 2010, right?
Yeah. yeah, so going on 10 years. Going on 10 years.
Going on 10 years. So, like, you know, Andrew and I have been through a lot over that time. And I think in terms of working with someone, I couldn't be more excited to be doing this and know how you work. And
absolutely.
Like, I think we do a good job balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses. So
100%. And I think that's something important that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, particularly in terms of, you know, I've spent the last year and a half looking at how can I be a better version of myself? What's holding me back from achieving what I want to achieve outside of my job? And this was prior to knowing that I was just going to quit and go and do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time reflecting on, okay, why is it that, you know, I find it so hard to do laundry on a Sunday? Why do I find it so difficult to be productive on the weekends doing things that I need to do or that I want to do?
Yeah.
And a big part of that, it turns out, is my job. And so removing that from the equation, very helpful. But something else that I thought about as a part of that process is, okay, I have certain limitations, and it's important for me, if I want to be successful doing something that's more my own venture, it's important for me to work with somebody who's going to provide or bring to the table a certain set of skills or motivation or drive that I don't have, and be that person. And, like, you know, something that we talked about for Ostrich, accountability.
Yeah.
With one person makes you 68% more likely to follow through, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
and more than one person is 90-something%.
Yeah.
So having somebody else who I find it very easy to get along with,
yeah,
and find it easy to be honest with about something else that I think is really important for us to be able to say, no, I don't like this, or no, I think we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So working with you from that standpoint is something that I'm excited about, because I think, and we've talked about this, my skill set differs from yours, but in a really useful way.
Yeah.
From an entrepreneurial standpoint, we're bringing enough each of us is bringing enough to the table that we hopefully have, you know, a lot of the package that you need in order to be effective co-founders and people running the company at an early stage.
Yeah.
And then, you know, something that's going to be really important for us is figuring out, okay, what do we need, and how can we hire to get different viewpoints and different skill sets.
Absolutely.
Alongside that. But yeah, something that, you know, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, going and doing it on your own is amazing if you can do it. But I think for most people, it's very difficult to do that. And so finding someone that you are, one, very comfortable with, and two, balances, like you said, balances out your skill set and brings something else to the table, and is going to be open to other ideas and trying to get different viewpoints is really important from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
Absolutely. We've been talking about how to best sculpt this, so we've, beyond just product and the value and who we're going after and all that kind of stuff, and how do we help those people the most, is also thinking about, well, how do we also set something up that works for us, but also works for everyone else that we bring to be a part of the flock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We talked a lot about making sure that we get people with different backgrounds and diverse perspectives, and really how valuable that is in terms of seeing things from a different lens, and then also having the flexibility where you can also focus on the things that are important to you. Because if you're happy and you have a really successful personal life and you feel good about yourself and your situation, that's obviously going to translate into your work. And having both of us worked for large companies, we see a lot of inefficiencies as well within that structure, and that you don't necessarily need that to create a really amazing environment, company, business, product that has a huge impact.
Yeah. And I think something that we both want to do is the main goal is to provide the best product that we can, help the most people that we can. But I think a very important piece of that is doing it in such a way that people are happy, that work for the company, and that we're happy. And that, again, that's something that I'm looking to achieve. But we want to be able to enable people that work for us to be the best versions of themselves, and to have that flexibility to say, okay, I work great from 9 to 12. I have terrible time working from 12 to 3. And then I'm pretty good again from like 4 to 7. You know, like, okay, that's great. If that works for you, then that works for you. And it's not about when do you get stuff done. It's about, okay, do you get stuff done on time?
Yeah.
And do you do it well?
Yeah.
That to me, it feels like the bigger thing. Going in with that viewpoint is really important because, you know, I know from personal experience that it's very draining to feel as though you don't have the ability to do things outside of your job that you want to do, because you're so worn out from working 60, 70, 80 hours in a week, and then you just have no time for your own life. And it's miserable, and you burn out, and you don't want to work in that situation. And that's what's led me to where I am right now. Yeah. So in a sense, that's, you know, it's worked out fine for me.
Absolutely.
But that's not an option for everybody, and it's not fun to go through that process. And, you know, hopefully it will have been a worthwhile sacrifice for me, and it's been a great education that I've gone through at that company. And so I don't want to completely throw them under the bus. I like the people there, and I've learned a lot.
Absolutely.
But it's not something that I would ever want to do long term.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, certainly from my perspective, it feels like that's a very important tenet of the company is to provide a place that people want to work at. And if that looks like 32 hours a work week, great. More power to everybody. I love that.
Yeah.
It's much better. 3-day weekends all year round sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, so
we'll see.
That's something that we're contemplating and figuring out is how can we extend that extra time, because I don't know, it seems like everyone is taking off a Monday or a Friday or not doing anything on those days anyway, or if you cut out all the useless meetings, you could give someone a whole day back of their life, and you know, that's more valuable than having someone sit there and
be unproductive
or be on Slack all day or whatever, or
waste of time.
Instant messaging.
Yeah.
So
well, we'll see how successful we are with that. Yeah. There's like a lot of millennial ideals coming in here that we have yet to figure out what works. But
absolutely, so we're trying
to go in with those ideas, I think.
Yeah. So, you know, as we mentioned, this podcast is about telling you what we're really thinking of what works or what doesn't. So more to report on that. But I mean, there was just like, I think Microsoft in India or something just tested a 3-day work week or something like that, and it was really successful. I've seen it all over LinkedIn, and but then you also hear like entrepreneurs that say that they wish they would have taken better care of themselves when they were building their businesses and building their companies, where they stayed up all the time and doing that. And so
it's very unhealthy. You
know, how can we do that? I've noticed that even just trying to like put stuff together on the website, like you know, like I'll sit there and be like I need to do a bajillion things and can't figure out how to do one thing, go to sleep, forget about it, even take some time in the morning, don't even think about it, and then get back to it and figure it out in 10 minutes. And you're like, come on.
How did I not get this first time?
You know, and you're like, I was more productive in 10 minutes than I was for 4 hours yesterday.
So, keeping that perspective is important. Remembering that you might need to take a break every once in a while. Really interesting. But I mean, alongside that, it's easy for us to dive into this kind of thing because it's something that we really want to do.
Absolutely.
And that we love. And there's a difference between, you know, really overworking, especially when you're working for somebody else and doing something you don't enjoy, and working a lot, but because it's on something that you're enjoying and that you really believe in and that you really want to be a part of and you want to make successful. I think that's another thing for us to keep in mind. It doesn't have to be, you know, for you and I specifically.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, this is something that we're going to build, and it's exciting to be a part of that, and it's okay. I don't mind you spending hours working and not being productive. That's fine. Like, don't let me take this away from you. I'm happy for you to do that, but if you can do it 10 minutes productive, even better.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
All right, so you just heard from Andrew Holliday, who is the co-founder of Ostrich. Him and I have been building this company together, and he is going on a really exciting trip, and him and I have some big plans and dreams for this company, so really excited to share that with you, and I hope that you enjoyed part 1. Part 2, even more, we're going to dive in deeper and actually go even further into the mental state and some of the things that Andrew's changed in his life that have allowed him to go on this trip and make the leap into entrepreneurship. So I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode, and tune in actually 2 weeks. There's a special New Year's episode. So in 2 weeks, you'll hear part 2 of my conversation with Andrew. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, William Glass, and this is the Silicon Alley Podcast.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying, I'll never leave this place. Some words got you searching for the bright side over and over until you're looking on the inside. One life, there's a feeling that side.
Special thanks to Brett Miller for providing his song Million Voices as the theme music to this podcast. Special thanks to Carolina Gankars for help directing. And thank you for listening. If you have any suggestions for future episodes or future guests to appear on the Silicon Alley podcast, follow us on social media and shoot us a message at Silicon Alley Podcast on all the socials. Twitter, it's at Silicon Alley Pod. Thanks so much for listening. This is a Financial Glass production. New episodes every Friday.